Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this fantabulous Tuesday morning. For those of us on the Best Coast or the West Coast, for those of you on the East Coast, I know it's a little bit closer to the afternoon. But thank you guys for coming. Today, we're going to be jumping into Microsoft Defender and all the different parts about Microsoft Defender and really how you can protect every layer within your Microsoft environment. Now, we do have a couple stragglers jumping on that I can see by the populating lobby here. So we're going to give a couple more minutes to our stragglers to hop on. In the meantime, as an icebreaker question, if you guys could just throw into the chat where you guys are signing in from. I know last time we had customers from the Nordic regions, we had customers from APAC, we had customers from EMEA, hoping we can get a bigger spread and diversity of countries here. So while we wait on our stragglers, please throw in where you're joining us from. All right,
Oh,
I see.
it's already getting close to their end of day.
Yeah, I see Tejas in here, Texas, where everything's bigger, Virginia, right on, New Hampshire, Maryland, place where I was born, South Carolina, was in.
Anybody else from Peoria, Illinois? Represent. Hi.
Oh, we got Ireland in the house too. Right on. Right on.
I'm in North Carolina, but I'm Irish, if that counts.
Well, we got both of those locales represented through the chat, so I think you're good, Heath. All right. Once the frequency of the waiting and lobby notifications stop, I'll make sure we kick it off here. We've just been waiting for about 2 minutes for everyone joining us, so we're going to give it a couple more minutes before we dive into how you can protect every layer of your IT infrastructure environment and even your endpoints in your modern work environment through Microsoft Defender. So we're looking forward to that. Fantabulous topic here we got for you, joined by even more fantabulous people. So give us a couple minutes here and we'll be sure to kick off shortly. All right. Great to see some of these AI note takers in the chat too. Definitely going to give you a good recap, but always a reminder for everyone joining us, we do send out recordings of this webinar. So if you don't have your AI chatbot on today, don't worry, you'll be receiving a recording of this webinar shortly after we complete here. All right. With that being said, another introduction for those of you who waited. This might be the second time you hear it, but we are going to be kicking off our webinar today around Microsoft Defender and all the different types of Defender and all the different solutions integrated therein to help you protect every layer within your IT environment. With that being said, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. You are joined by myself, your regular host, Sam Raw, driving go-to-market solutions here at TrustedTech, and I am joined by much smarter people than myself, which I'm thankful for. Heath, Lance, and Anton. I'll let them do a roundabout and introduce themselves here. Take it away, Heath.
Heath Madison, Senior Director, Professional Services. Happy to be here. Ultimately, at TrustedTech, anything we do, proactive and professional service related, it's my responsibility to make sure you get what you need with the highest possible level of satisfaction. Lance?
Thanks, Heath. My name is Lance Wade-Zunis. I'm the manager of Azure Services and Solutions here at TrustedTech. And it's my job to make sure that our clients are happy and that our projects are implemented on time, on budget, and with the desired expectations that we always try and drive to every single thing we do. With that, over to Anton.
Awesome. Thank you, Lance. My name is Anton. I sit on the account executive team here at TrustedTech, and day in and day out, I work with customers on Microsoft 365 licensing. So I help organizations navigate the complexity of all the different licensing models that you can find under Microsoft. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us today. We'll just go through a really quick overview of what's entailed in the agenda so you guys can have an idea of what we are going to talk about today, what we are going to touch on, and really how we can help you get to where you want to be. So first, we're going to kick it off with a cloud security reality check. We just want to level set with you and help you understand what's going on today. What are things that you might need to keep in mind that you're not keeping in mind? Right after that, we'll dive into Microsoft Defender for Cloud. at the introduction, I mentioned how there are different types of Defender. Well, this is one of the most comprehensive forms of Defender that you can take advantage of that you might not be today. And then we'll talk about, okay, great, not only defending the cloud, but can we defend and how can we use Microsoft Defender to secure the hybrid and enterprise environment? From there, transitioning into understanding mitigation and remediation when it comes to Defender and all the technologies therein. And then looking at how Microsoft Sentinel integrates into the ecosystem and how that helps you maintain a robust security posture. And then we do have an exclusive offer for the attendees to this webinar, so stay tuned for that. And we'll close it out, as we always do, with a Q&A session with the folks that introduced themselves earlier today. With that being said, I'd like to pass off the virtual mic to Lance here to go over the cloud security reality check and what that means. Take it away, Lance.
And while we're getting into there, sorry to interrupt, Lance, but what I would encourage everybody to do, if you want to ask any questions and you want to make sure you don't have to remember it for the end, there's a Q&A panel. Go ahead and post your question to that Q&A panel now. That way, when we get to the Q&A session, we can get to those questions.
Perfect. Oh, Lance, I think we got you on mute here.
Yes, you do. Hey, we got it out of the way early, so there we go. Perfect. All right. Well, Heath, I appreciate you injecting some sanity into the otherwise fun goings on that we have today. So we're going to talk a little bit about a reality check. A lot of people are getting into cloud, either hybrid or trying to go cloud first, cloud forward. And one of the common misconceptions is that the cloud is natively secure, which it's not. It really is not. It's no different than kind of what we're doing on-prem or in other environments today. And just because there's a shared responsibility model, which we'll get into in a few minutes here, doesn't necessarily mean that your responsibility for security is fully eliminated. I've been doing this for over 20 years now, with Azure for 15. And we've kind of seen it all. And I know Heath will speak to some of this stuff as we go along too. But some of the things that we see clients doing on a day in and day out basis are just very simple things. But you'd surprise at how complicated and how dangerous some of these things are. Stuff like over-privileging your roles in the cloud, having too many owners out there, not using stuff like privileged identity management where you can make roles eligible. One big one is not having MFA in place. It's 2025. There's no reason to not have a second or more form of authentication. You should not just be using your password anymore. Having stuff like your networking completely unconfigured where you've got ports open out to the internet. Folks are exposing things out to a wide world of brute force attacks these days, and they don't even realize these configurations are sitting out there. Or in some cases having DDoS protection enabled, which is inherently baked into everything that we do on the Azure side. Having your storage configured for public access. You may not even realize that you've got a storage account sitting in Azure that is open out to the internet, and folks can anonymously connect in and access all of the data that's sitting in there with basically no checks and no balances in place. And then not having logging or monitoring configured. We have a diverse system of logging and monitoring in Azure and in multi-cloud as well. And not taking advantage of that stuff is a massive mistake, and it's a huge overlook that a lot of folks make. And so those are just some of the misconfigurations that we have out there.
Thank you, Lance. And so, as mentioned, the cloud, it isn't natively secure, right? Yes, Microsoft is responsible for a portion of the security because under SaaS models, right, they're hosting the infrastructure, but we are also responsible for keeping our data secure. So this delineation is known as the shared responsibility model. Right. So let's start by talking about what Microsoft is responsible for, and that is for securing the cloud infrastructure itself. So things like the physical data centers, the networking, and the Azure platform that our workloads run on. Microsoft will handle that. They take care of the redundancy and the uptime and some other foundational protections like encryption and DDoS defense. But on the customer side, we're responsible for what's actually in the cloud, meaning our data, our users, our applications, and our configurations, which Lance just spoke about some common misconfigurations. All of that needs to be managed by us in terms of our security posture. So in essence, just understanding where our responsibility begins is critical to making sure that our environments are as secure as possible. So let's break down shared responsibility a little bit more, just looking at the differences between on-prem environments, fully cloud SaaS environments, and everything in between. So in on-prem environments, right, all the way on the right, your organization will own and manage everything, right, from the physical data center all the way to the applications and data being hosted within. So obviously, when you're fully on-prem, it gives you maximum control, but it's also a maximum cost, right? Your total cost of ownership is incredibly high. It's not cheap to host all of that physical infrastructure, and maximum risk, right? You're not sharing responsibility with anyone if something goes wrong. All of that falls to the organization. But moving more to the left in IaaS environments, right, infrastructure as a service, that's when Microsoft begins to take on the physical infrastructure and networking layers, while your organization will still manage things like the operating systems and the applications and the data. So yeah, you're saving on the hardware and maintenance, but all the security configuration and monitoring falls to your team. Moving along, you'll have your PaaS environments, right? Platform as a service. In these environments, Microsoft will take care of the infrastructure and the operating system and the scaling, right? It's really easy to scale when you're leveraging Microsoft's platform as quickly as you need to, which will let your team focus on building and deploying and, more importantly, securing your applications and data. And then lastly, of course, we have our fully cloud, our SaaS environments like Microsoft 365, which is a great example. Nearly everything below the data layer is managed by Microsoft, but you still own your data and your identities and your access controls. So SaaS environments will provide the lowest cost, right? You're not paying for all the costly infrastructure. And you also assume minimal risk when you're, comparing it to an on-prem or an IaaS or a PaaS environment.
Awesome. Thank you for that. For those of you who just saw a window pop up, that is a polling question. We want to better understand your environment to better fulfill your needs. So please let us know. Feel free to answer between that yes or no question. But Anton, Lance, thank you so much for going over what that shared responsibility model means. And I think one of the key takeaways that Anton, you alluded to was mitigating risk as we move further into the cloud. But understandably, we know the risk is still there. Lance, can you explain to us how we can better understand how to best defend our cloud from malicious actors and potential cyber threats?
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. Before we do that, I think it's important to differentiate between Defender and Defender for Cloud. You may have heard of Defender. It's been around for a while. This is Microsoft's suite of security software on an endpoint on your PC or on a server. It's actually been around since like Windows 7, back when it was called Security Essentials. But now they've built a lot of extra features into it, made it much more in-depth and diverse. And so Defender is your kind of real-time on-system protection, whereas Defender for Cloud is the cloud version of what kind of Defender does for your PC. Defender for Cloud expands that into the entire cloud ecosystem. It's considered a cloud-native application protection platform, a CNAPP, if you will. What this does is it unifies all of your security across the cloud ecosystem into one single place. So it takes all of your DevOps management, for instance. So like if you're managing your code level security, all of that's integrated into DevSecOps in Defender for Cloud. It also integrates cloud security posture management, which is kind of that ongoing continuous assessment of your resources in the cloud. And it determines where your vulnerabilities are, what your attack surface is like, and then any sort of configuration that falls outside of best practices. And then finally, Defender for Cloud integrates a really cool thing called the Cloud Workload Protection Platform. Say that one 10 times fast. And what that does is it creates a holistic connection between all of the different resources that you're running in the cloud and your security management or your SecOps system. So what does all of this actually look like? Let's just look at a picture basically of what Defender for Cloud is. And you can see it's basically three prongs, three pillars. We're unifying your DevOps and managing all of that security in one place. we're strengthening your cloud security posture with CSPM, and then we're protecting all of your workloads with CWPP. Now, one of the really cool things that Defender for Cloud does is you'll notice those icons down at the bottom. This is not an Azure product. This actually is a multi-cloud, multi-environment security operations system. So Defender for Cloud can actually extend beyond Azure into AWS, GCP, on-prem, really anywhere that your resources live, to ensure that all of that security data is being funneled back into a single pane of glass, so you have one centralized point of management. But let's talk about what all makes up Defender for Cloud. It's not just, endpoint defense. It's like I said earlier, a holistic approach to security in the cloud. So obviously we've talked about security posture management, and there's two flavors of that. There's Defender CSPM and Foundational CSPM. Really cool thing, Microsoft gives the foundational cloud security posture management away for free. So you can do basic assessment of your resources in Azure without any extra cost built into it, which is really nice. But then as needed, you can add on services in Defender for Cloud. Obviously, there's Defender for Servers, which is your endpoint defense for your workloads that are living on a traditional infrastructure as a service virtual machine. Defender for Containers, it's for your Kubernetes workloads or your container workloads to ensure that those are safe and secure and that your images are fully protected. We can protect Resource Manager in Azure as well, which is really cool. So we can ensure that there's no malicious deployments or any malformed code being injected into our Resource Manager deployments. We protect our APIs, making sure that there's nothing bad happening going over those APIs from source to destination and vice versa. We take a look at our key vaults, ensuring that there's no malicious access or activity into those places that are so important to store your secrets and your certificates and all of that very important stuff. And of course, that none of those are exposed in plain text too, because we want to make sure that's fully encrypted and protected. We take a look at our databases with Defender for Cloud, ensuring that there's no injection attacks or any bad data being passed into or from those, and that there's no bad access available via open resources that somebody could exploit. We protect our app service in Azure, which is something that a lot of folks are moving over to now, migrating from a traditional VM workload in IIS over into a platform as a service, app service, and eliminating that need to maintain an operating system like we looked at in our shared responsibility model. And of course, Defender for Cloud protects all of that. And then one of my favorite things that Defender for Cloud does is it protects all of your storage as well. Even going as far as protecting against malware and ransomware, stopping those types of things before they have a chance to take down your mission critical applications and data in Azure. So obviously there's a lot of stuff that Defender for Cloud does, and they do it really well at the subscription level in Azure. But then like we said earlier, this is all stuff that can be covered outside of Azure as well. And one of the things that a lot of clients are doing now is they're looking at securing their DevOps workloads, which traditionally when we talk about development and testing, those are things that we don't typically focus on security, but it's something that as folks are becoming more security first in their design and architecture, we're talking about having to secure those workloads more aggressively. And so DevSecOps is something that Microsoft is really focused on. And it's something that I want to talk about in a little bit more detail here, in that what Microsoft Defender for Cloud does is it integrates with that DevSecOps, and it is code first. So we want to make sure that we start from the very beginning of development and that this goes all the way into production where your apps are being released, and we ensure that your code has integrity and that there's no malicious access from the beginning of development through your various resources in your repos, whether it be GitHub or Azure DevOps, and then all the way into production as those applications are released. And so we do have a slide on the DevSecOps. I'm not sure if maybe my view isn't updating. There it is. Awesome. Of course, development runs a little slower sometimes, and so that's why we just wanted to illustrate that even DevSecOps can catch up eventually. But yeah, just know that DevSecOps is a focus for Microsoft moving forward, and so our customers that are making sure that their whole ecosystem is protected, not just in production, out facing the internet, but internally as well. We have all sorts of resources available to make sure that stuff is protected. And then finally, the moving on from DevOps, finally, I want to talk about cloud security posture management. And this is something that we hit on a little bit earlier. This is a really cool thing that Microsoft does with Defender for Cloud, and this allows you to do continuous evaluation of all of your resources.
I need to interrupt you for 1 second, Lance.
Yeah, go ahead.
To kind of do a little housekeeping. I've had a report that someone's not seeing the slides. If you're unable to see the slides, please go ahead and raise your hand virtually at the top of your screen so that I can kind of work through that.
Okay.
I do know some folks said they had to clear the pop-ups that popped up about recording to actually see the slides. So
yep. Yeah, well, we're security first here, Heath. So we want to make sure that we're being cognizant of our viewers' security.
Perfect. So. We'll reach out to the ones with their hands raised. So you can go back to your presentation. We'll see if we can get the rest resolved.
Excellent. I appreciate the attention to that detail, Heath. So just circling back to security posture management, this is one of those components that is very important for folks that are security conscious across their entire ecosystem. One of the neat things that Defender for Cloud does, we kind of talked about it earlier, is that because it's multi-cloud via a product called Azure Arc, we are able to pull in security data from outside of Azure into that Defender portal. And so Cloud Security Posture Management will provide that same assessment of how well you're doing your security based on best practices. Microsoft's Cloud Security Benchmark is one thing that they assess, but there's all kinds of other mechanics, both regulatory and just foundational benchmarks that we can use to score those resources. But ultimately, even the free version of CSPM provides valuable and actionable information on your resource configurations and ensures that you're providing the most secure environment possible, both internally and externally. Beyond Cloud Security Posture Management, we also secure our SaaS applications. And so we talked about CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management. On the SaaS side, we have SSPM, which, believe it or not, stands for SaaS Security Posture Management. Very original name, I know. But what this does is it provides that same level of insight into all of your SaaS resources, whether those are homegrown, like an app that you've developed from scratch, or it be your Office 365 apps, ServiceNow, QuickBooks, those kind of applications that you're hosting in SaaS, both from a compute and data standpoint in Azure. Defender for Cloud secures those and verifies that they are as safe and protected as possible. And so those are just a few of the things that the CWPP can provide. Anton's going to spend a little bit more time digging into the details and tell us about some of the more amazing things that we're doing on Defender for Cloud.
Thank you, Lance. So the Cloud Workload Protection Platform, say that 10 times fast, it's quite a mouthful. It just refers to all of the solutions within the Defender ecosystem and the portions of your environment they're built to protect, right? Lance showed a nice graphic with seeing your environment in a 360-degree view and all the different products that the CWPP can help you defend. We're going to dive into that a little bit more. But before we do, it's just what's crucial to understand is the CWPP is a unified experience where you can detect threats from a holistic view, right? A 360-degree view from your environment without the need to fragment across half a dozen different providers with different solutions that just adds time and management complexity to your security posture. Right. So digging into the most common solutions under the CWPP, we'll start with Defender for Servers, right? If your priority is securing endpoints with just-in-time access, vulnerability scanning, and file integrity monitoring, Defender for Servers is going to be your go-to. It ultimately helps protect one of the largest and most targeted attack surfaces in your environment, and that's your on-prem infrastructure. Right. But moving on to Defender for Storage, if you're looking to safeguard against harmful malware uploads and data exfiltration, large amounts of data, hundreds of gigabytes or terabytes of data leaving your organization all at once, Defender for Storage is built for that. It secures stored data, which is a commonly overlooked aspect in cloud security, is protecting your storage. Next, we'll have Defender for Azure SQL and Cosmos DB. So this is for organizations focused on protecting sensitive data in their databases. And it provides vulnerability assessments and real-time detection for database attacks. Right. And then lastly, we'll have Defender for Containers. This is for those fast-moving DevOps environments, and it will deliver image scanning, environment hardening, and runtime protection to keep your containerized workloads secure. And then we'll have a few more. We'll have Defender for App Service, Defender for Key Vault, Resource Manager, Defender for DNS. These Defender plans will help you identify weaknesses across your application stack. So spotting misconfigurations, which we spoke about earlier, privilege risks, and DNS vulnerabilities that can expose your environment to attack. And then we'll have the rest of our workload protection Defender plans, right? Each Defender plan will integrate with SIEM and SOAR tools like Microsoft Sentinel, which I believe we'll be touching on soon, to correlate alerts, identify attack patterns, and automate responses, which will reduce risk and just improve time to remediation for security breaches.
Awesome. Anton, Lance, thank you so much for that overview. Really, it seems like cloud workload protection, that absolutely is a mouthful, will help you elevate your security posture to then help you securely optimize your DevSec environment. Now, I believe all this is geared towards ensuring business continuity and optimizing that. Thank you so much for that overview. And I know we talked about how we can protect the cloud and defend a cloud from malicious actors and players. But what about the hybrid environment? Lance, can you help us better understand that?
Yes, I sure can, Sam. And I saw comments in the chat earlier that some folks are already using Azure Arc with their on-prem resources to protect them with Defender for Cloud. So that's awesome to see. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here. And that Defender for Cloud is a holistic system of protection. It's not just what you're doing in Azure in the Azure public cloud. This extends via Azure Arc into all other resources that you have out there. So whether you're running multi-cloud with AWS and GCP, or you're still sitting on-prem, Azure Arc allows you to extend the Azure control plane beyond just what you can do in the Azure cloud. You can take your Azure governance and extend that into other sources as well. But also you can use Defender for Cloud on all of those to assess your security. And so it provides continuous evaluation and assessment of your resources, really no matter where they live, whether they're in Azure or on-prem or anywhere else. But most importantly, this allows you to provide consistent standards and a set of standardized governance pretty much everywhere your resources live, both in how they're running from an operational excellence standpoint and then how you're securing them as well. And of course, when it comes down to regulatory compliance, this is absolutely essential in making sure that those audits run smoothly and you're not spending weeks going through those. And we'll talk about those in a little bit here. But what does it actually look like to strengthen the security posture in a hybrid environment? Well, the first thing we want to do is make sure that we're doing continuous assessments. And that's something the Defender for Cloud does really, really well with cloud security posture management, vulnerability scanning, Defender for Endpoint, all of these various tools that were allowed. Make sure that we can check all of our resources all the time, no matter where they live. And then we're integrating with all of our other platforms. So Defender for Cloud is more than just endpoints and databases and stuff. You saw earlier that it touches on almost every type of resource that you could possibly be running in the cloud, as well as on-prem. So we're not just talking about, typical cloud resources. We're securing our servers and workloads in the office too. And again, creating that single pane of glass, that centralized point of management and visibility for all of this stuff. And then we're using something called Secure Score to see how we're doing. It's a number that a lot of folks spend a lot of time looking at. Oh, we're only at, 70, 80%. How do we get to 90? And the beautiful thing is there's companies like TrustedTech that can step in and help you get that number up as high as it could potentially go. And so we're around to help you guys with that as well. But Microsoft provides some advice and some input, making sure that you guys are educated and know kind of what your next steps are all the time. And the point is we want to make sure we're practicing defense in depth. We're securing all of our resources at every single level, and we're making sure that we're getting actionable threat intelligence from every single angle possible. Spoke to it a little bit earlier, but from a compliance standpoint, Anton, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how Defender for Cloud can help us there?
Yeah, so when we're talking about strengthening our security posture in hybrid cloud environments, it's really important to call out how regulated this is. Really important for highly regulated sectors like government, healthcare, and financial services. So when we look at these industries, we'll see a consistent challenge, and that these are complex hybrid environments with very strict compliance mandates and expanding attack surfaces, right? So especially as these types of organizations maintain a pretty hefty on-prem environment, but they may be also adopting policies like BYOD, just depending on the organization. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud will help these specific organizations stay compliant and reduce risk without increasing their overhead or management complexity. Right. So touching on government agencies, obviously these types of organizations are protected by FedRAMP or governed by DoD mandates. Government agencies will rely on Defender to maintain continuous authorization and manage risk across their Azure government and hybrid environments. So really important to secure, hybrid environments for government organizations. We'll also see healthcare. So in healthcare, Defender will enable secure posture management and rapid threat detection, especially across telehealth and on-prem and cloud systems to protect patient data, right? It's crucial for HIPAA compliance to make sure that patient data is protected. And then lastly, obviously, we'll have financial services. So in financial services, Defender will provide visibility to help detect misconfigurations and mitigate insider risk, which is a big concern in the financial services industry. So also crucial for aligning with strict regulatory compliance.
Awesome, awesome. So it seems like really Defender and Arc working together help you secure a hybrid environment, regardless of its tied to a highly compliant vertical like healthcare, financial services, or government institutions. But wait, that seems like a lot of data. What do we do after we detect it? Can you give us some actionable insights about mitigation and remediation around this?
Yeah, I've got that one, Sam. And there is a lot of data that's ingested with Defender, especially when you start extending that out beyond Azure into on-prem and other clouds. But rest assured that Microsoft falls under very similar and very stringent regulatory compliance as a lot of our clients do. And so the data that is collected by Defender is only retained for 14 days internally. Of course, it's encrypted at rest as well. And Microsoft has very strict protections put in place to ensure that all of the data is segregated between clients as well. So just because it's a public cloud service does not mean that you're sharing any data residency with your neighbors. So there are other systems that we can put in place too to take this data and move it elsewhere, report on it in more depth, and then act on it. We're going to talk about that in a little bit here, as well as with how Defender for Cloud integrates with data from other sources like Entra and on-prem and all of this other stuff in a extended detection and response network. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that, Microsoft values the data that comes in and they secure it about as stringently as possible. So we wanted to make sure that some of that information was kind of thrown out there so everybody can see it. That being said, I want to take some more time and kind of circle back to where we got started. We talked about security misconfigurations and gaps earlier, and we hit on a few. But I wanted to kind of circle back and bring Heath in the conversation because Heath's been around the block once or twice, and I'm putting that very nicely, Heath. Let's just say that. And Heath and I, we've worked together for a long time, and I would like to say that we've seen it all. But every day brings something new when it comes to IT. So I just want to talk about a couple of the things that we've seen in our experience. And one of the things, and I know, Heath, this is something that we've talked about before, is having your data sitting out there on the internet and not realizing that you've misconfigured it and allowed it to be public. And I know that we've never, ever seen a major breach happen with misconfigured storage before, right? We've never read anything about that.
No, definitely not, Lance. I mean, I can't imagine that ever happening.
Yeah. Well, those are things that people do amazingly overlook. And something else I know that we never hear about in the news are endpoint detection and response misconfigurations, either not having them in place or having them misconfigured where we're not finding things that are actually happening. And certainly we've never had any issues with EDR publicly potentially taking down, air travel and stuff for a few days, right?
No, I've never heard of such a thing. Not when I'm actually getting on an airplane at the time, and
Yeah.
not when I'm actually personally impacted by that. Never
Yeah.
seen that happen before.
Yeah, and one of the other things I think that is actually very common in my experience when I run a security assessment is we'll uncover clients. It's 2025, and we'll find clients that are still running Server 2003 R2. Or, there will be a client sitting out there that has Server 2008 with IIS open, facing out onto the internet, that kind of stuff. And certainly we've never seen issues where a client forgets that there's a box sitting in a closet somewhere that's sitting on their DMZ, sharing some file out to the internet. Oh, and of course it's probably domain joined, right?
Well, but I mean, it was probably innocent, Lance. It was probably put there by a user that wanted to be able to get some work done while they were on vacation, and that made
Yes.
it easy for them.
The classic
The
jump
best of
box.
intentions.
Yeah, and of course VPN and jump boxes are never exploited for lateral access into a network, right? We've never seen that before.
No,
Never.
definitely not. And
Well,
wrongdoers are not sitting there scanning for those things 24
and
by
that
7.
brings me to my next point is, of course, none of us have ever opened port 3389 out to the internet. Right, Heath? We've
It's
never ever done that.
it's okay, Lance. Nobody knows what 3389 is for.
Hey, you know what, Heath? Whenever I need to have a nice, quiet conversation with my wife, I'll always talk about or exposed ports out to the internet. And she always says, 3389 is one you really should secure, right? But, hey, Heath, just so you know, of course, I always have my conversations with my wife in TCP/IP just to make sure that she's acknowledging everything I'm saying, right? We never talk in UDP.
Really, my wife's more of a UDP person.
Oh, well, we'll have to talk about that later. And finally, I guess one of the most important things that I see kind of in my practice, again, doing security assessments with clients pretty regularly, is just misconfigured identity. I cannot tell you how many times I've talked to a client who has an Azure subscription. They're using their regular daily driver email, and they have owner and global admin permanently assigned to that user. And by the way, their password is password 12345. So, that's not a risk, right? I mean, that's totally fine to have that configuration out in the wild.
But it's easier, Lance. I mean, you don't
That's
have
true.
to switch accounts to do administrative functions, and that's one of the common things we see every day, though, right? It's not bad intentions. It's simplifying. It's streamlining. But what the cloud has done is it just expanded exponentially our attack surface area. So, and that's what a lot of what we're talking about today is trying to help close some of that. It was a lot easier when you had just your data center and you had the ingress, your WAN access for your data center. You had one place to secure. Now you have this robust, wonderful, amazing cloud environment, but now we have to be a lot more cautious. Microsoft will protect that ingress to the data center. We talked about that earlier, but it's up to us to protect the rest.
That's right. Yep. And it's a good thing that we have some awesome tools to integrate all of this information together, which I think is kind of where we're moving along to right now.
Yeah, no, thank you for that awesome overview. And Heath, I think what you said was so compelling, right? With the migration to the cloud and adoption to the cloud and utilization of the cloud, we exponentially increase our attack surface, right? That has to present an issue for a lot of IT admins and users in terms of understanding what's happening, how to monitor, how to observe what's going on in their environment for potential threats. Earlier, Lance, you mentioned Microsoft Sentinel. Can we double click there and can you help us understand more?
Yeah, absolutely. So to talk about Sentinel, we want to talk about Defender XDR as well. And I kind of planted some seeds about this earlier. And Defender XDR is the extended detection and response kind of platform that Microsoft has created out there that takes all of this data that we're collecting across all of our different services in Microsoft. Whether that be sourced from something like Entra ID or your on-prem Active Directory or Microsoft 365, all of that data needs to go somewhere to do something with it. And that's where Defender XDR comes into play. That lets us take all of that data and create a bridge. Essentially, it's where all of this data can live, and then we can connect all of that together into the Defender portal and leverage technology called Sentinel. And if you're familiar with SIEM or SOAR systems, Sentinel is Microsoft's version of that, where we can take all of this information that we're collecting across all of these platforms and triggers and all of these alerts and all of this data that's really kind of overwhelming when you think about it, but we can create some logic. We can create some sanity to all of that data, and then we can automate what happens when certain things come in at 3 in the morning or something on a Sunday, when a user tries to change their password from 40 countries away from where they actually live. Instead of having to roll out of bed and handle a compromise, Sentinel allows us to create intelligence behind the alert and actually act on that and make sure that things are taken care of before they become a problem. And all of this plays into what Microsoft has built out as the Defender portal. The Defender portal is kind of the home for everything that we do in Defender for Cloud. It takes all of this information that we're accumulating, both from Defender for Cloud and Azure, as well as all of your other sources on-prem, 365, your threat intelligence, and then it compiles it into this Defender XDR, which is basically a amalgamation of all of these different services, all of these signals, and then all of this feeds through Sentinel into the Defender portal, where we can act intelligently on all of this data. So this creates our security operations. This is what lets us basically have smart threat hunting and intelligence, where we're not just seeing what's happening, we're taking action and being proactive about security. And that's kind of the natural evolution of where all of this is heading. Is we don't just want to be responsive or reactive. We want to make sure that we're getting out ahead of this stuff and that we're investigating these threats before they're able to compromise systems or pivot from one to the other. So how does it all work? How does Defender XDR and Sentinel kind of play together? Well, first thing, you've got to onboard into Sentinel. A lot of clients already actually have some of the licensing for this built in, and that's something that TrustedTech can help you determine as we start working together on maybe a security assessment or something we'll talk about in a little bit here. But once you've got everything set up, it's really as simple as kind of just one clicking to onboard everything, creating a bi-directional sync between the Sentinel and XDR to share this information back and forth. And then we create our alerts, and then we create our investigations. It's a very simple system once you kind of get your hands around how easy it is to configure, but it's extremely powerful. I always say it's one of those kind of low floor, high ceiling systems where it's easy to get into, but then the amount of stuff you can do in Sentinel with Defender XDR is really impressive. And we would be really happy to help you kind of walk through all those different things that you can do with it. So what does this actually look like when we're talking about incident and alerts? And it's all about defense in depth. And so we're going to cover everything from top to bottom with Defender XDR and Sentinel. So we're not just talking about one source of information coming in. We talked about how this creates a single pane of glass, how we have all of these sources bringing all of this data in, where normally we're having to sign into AWS, GCP, Azure, on-prem security, your endpoint detection and response. All of these different systems now turn into one. So you use Defender for Cloud to have oversight, control, and basically full authority over everything that you're running out there, whether it be in Azure, on-prem, multi-cloud. It doesn't matter anymore, because now we can control all of it through one single place. We become an expert at one system, and we make sure that we are creating actionable intelligence. And it is a system that's easy to learn, but we can absolutely help you guys master it. And so that kind of leads into the next step, which I'm going to throw it over to Heath and Anton to kind of talk about what do we do with all of this and how we can help you with it.
Awesome. I think Lance said it best. I'd like to bring back into the mix Heath and Anton here to go over an exclusive offer that we have for our customers here today. Heath, Anton, can you give us just key takeaways around the offer and why folks on the webinar today might be interested?
So what I really like about this cloud security and visioning workshop is it kind of operates on giving you benefit today and for the future. So we host a workshop for you. We meet, we talk, we get to understand your environment. We take a look, we find current gaps, immediate threats that you can resolve. But we also help you build your security roadmap moving forward so that we're making sure you're prepared for the future. And for just taking an hour of your time, I can't remember the last time I made $1,000 an hour, but we are going to give you $1,000 off of that standard workshop. So I saw there was a comment even about the cost of Microsoft Cloud offerings. As part of that, if we're coming up with a roadmap, there's ways that we can, our licensing specialist, which I will never claim to be one, nor do I want to be, can actually help figure out how we can maximize that between Microsoft incentives, bundled pricing, things we can do to try to offset some of that so you get that protection. I'd still challenge, I think, rather than going with a bunch of one-off separate products, it's better, but those are all things we'll talk about during that envisioning workshop.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for going over that with us. As we move into the Q&A session, please leverage the button on the right if you'd like to be a part of that envisioning workshop and take advantage of that offer. If you'd like to understand more about Copilot in our next webinar, our registration page is open for you. Speaking of Copilot and AI, we asked a polling question about some of your security concerns as you modernize and with the advent of AI and integration of AI. Heath, can you expand more on how AI presents risk from a security perspective?
So when it comes to AI we know more and more is built into everything. It was actually kind of funny. I saw on the one poll, or I don't know if funny is the right word, but on one of the polls, AI was what people commented was the biggest concern they have on security. And it's true. AI can be a security risk. It also has the ability to uncover security kind of vulnerabilities in our environment. But that same capability makes it a powerful tool to support us. So obviously from a real-time analysis, defenders using AI to kind of, assess what's going on in real time. But keep in mind, with the scale Microsoft has, the last number I saw was about 65 trillion daily interactions that it's learning from as well. The machine learning algorithms that Microsoft are learning from. And it's taking that and embedding that into the predictive analysis. So you can actually have those automatic actions that Lance was talking about earlier, where it automatically alerts or locks down something based on a specific behavior. As a lot of IT managers I've spoken about summed it up really well in saying it's what helps them sleep at night. That same level. So now, even when it's new, it's not something known, but based on those 65 trillion daily interactions, it is constantly evaluating and better predicting. Now you can actually make those same actions based on that predictive data. So now it's really able to continually learn, grow, and protect you better from the AI that's trying to harm you.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, the fact that AI is being integrated into cyber threats is pretty wild to even think of when a lot of folks are just still even struggling to adopt AI. But that being said, you mentioned something about leveraging AI to better detect and move more quickly. And I know Lance mentioned something about single pane. Lance, for those that aren't aware on the call today, can you help them understand what the single pane approach of observability is and why it's so important for a lot of IT decision makers?
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. I remember 20 years ago, we were building, I think it was like a visual basic dashboard for a client. And it was basically they wanted to see their productivity for the day. And the owner wanted to come in, he wanted to look at it, and he wanted to see the color and determine if he could go golfing or not. So we called this the Go Golfing dashboard. And so that's the idea here is that we have all of these data sources that right now if you've got assets in multi-cloud, on-prem, everywhere, if you've got multiple tools trying to control them, all these different products, you've got logins for 15 different things you need to keep track of. it's difficult. I mean, it's a full-time job just to maintain kind of your sprawl of information. Defender for Cloud takes all of that and it puts it into one screen. So instead of having to click around between 15 different browsers and all of these different platforms, everything we do is in that Defender portal. And because we can integrate with on-prem and multi-cloud via Azure Arc, we can take all of that stuff that normally you'd have to have, multiple folks managing, and we manage it in one place in the Defender portal. So instead of having all of these screens, kind of assessing our real estate, now it's all in just one single screen. It's at a glance management, and you've got visibility pretty much everywhere while just having a nice, simple single screen to look at.
Love that. Love that. So if I'm understanding this correctly, single pane of glass observability in conjunction with the AI functionalities and advancements within Defender, essentially the outcome of this is quicker actionable insights that are qualitative and quantitative so you can ensure that you're making the right security decisions for your environment. Is that right?
That sounds an awful lot like Microsoft marketing, Sam, but yes, that is correct. No, absolutely. And the idea is to make better decisions faster. The last thing we want to do is sit and spin when it comes to security, because the longer a bad actor has access to your systems, the more damage they can do, and the higher risk you have of what's called a foothold situation, where somebody, looks like they're out, but they've left some breadcrumbs and they're going to come back in. And that's something that Defender for Cloud with EDR, Defender XDR, and Sentinel are really good at doing, is creating a diverse investigation into what happened and giving you that peace of mind that this investigation is complete. They're out. They're not coming back. So yeah, that it is a great way to look at it, Sam. Absolutely.
Gotcha. I did have one question come up through the chat about the assessment, or excuse me, about the cloud security envisioning workshop. If we're being offered $1,000 off the security workshop, what is the actual price of the security workshop?
It really depends on your organization. Honestly, what you currently have with TrustedTech, because you could be part of our CSS program, so you may have some proactive credits and stuff there, but it should put the price. It's really flexible. I hate to sit here and quote this on a recorded line, but I would say we can probably do it for it lists for between 6,500 and 7,500, but I'd feel pretty confident in saying we could be at the low end of that for the session with our experts and all the follow-up and recommendations for probably around $5,500. So I will say that $1,000, just because I'm feeling friendly, but now this is recorded, is actually $1,000 to $2,000 off.
No worries. I think all our attendees understand that every IT environment is unique to its own. So understanding that and understanding of nuances, that's why we have so much project-oriented pricing, especially within the IT professional services industry. Thank you for giving us that ballpark to work with, though. I do want to make sure that I do a last call for questions. If you have questions, or if we've inspired more questions, as we often can, please let us know through the chat box or through the Q&A box. That being said, thank you as always for your time and for being a valued attendee of the webinar. And if you are an existing customer or valued customer to TrustedTech, we're here for you always, not only those of us speaking on this call today, but your account managers, our account executives like Anton, we're here to help you succeed. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a fantabulous day.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.